Elizabeth proved to be one of the most brilliantly learned women in 16th century Europe. She also inherited her father's famously passionate and fiery temper, and could be a difficult mistress to serve at times. Deprived of her mother at a painfully young age, and her relationship with her father being what it was, Elizabeth looked elsewhere for familial closeness, mentorship, and love. Elizabeth did develop a closeness with her younger brother, Prince Edward, most likely because they were so much closer in age than herself and Mary, and Elizabeth came to love her baby brother. She carried the chrism at Edward's baptism. They shared the same tutors when it came time for their formal education, and shared their lessons with one another, even writing letters to one another in Latin, and they were both raised and influenced by the same ardently Protestant reformers. Elizabeth found surrogate mothers in her governesses, and in the succession of stepmothers, the Protestant German princess, Anne of Cleves, whom Henry married when Elizabeth was 7 years old, took both interest and delight in Henry's youngest daughter. Whilst her marriage to Henry lasted only 6 months, Anne and Elizabeth continued to visit and write each other following the divorce. However, Elizabeth had little time to get close to Jane Seymour or Catherine Howard, both of whom were dead within 2 years of marriage to the king, Jane in childbirth, and Catherine executed for adultery and treason, just as Elizabeth's mother had been. When the 19-year-old Catherine Howard, who was, in fact, Anne Boleyn's cousin, was beheaded, Elizabeth drew an important lesson from it. The 8-year-old princess, no doubt remembering what had happened to her mother also, remarked to her friend and schoolmate, Robert Dudley, "I shall never marry." This lesson would be reinforced over and over again as Elizabeth grew up, as she observed that married women were invariably at the mercy of their husbands, surrendering all power and self-determination to them. Henry's 6th wife, Catherine Parr, whom Henry married when Elizabeth was 11 years old, was also kind and motherly towards her. Catherine recognized the young princess's intellectual potential and encouraged her in her academic pursuits, and it is Catherine Parr who is often credited with persuading Henry to restore both Mary and Elizabeth to the line of succession for the throne after their younger brother. However, ultimately, it was the serving members of Elizabeth's household, most of whom were extended relations of her mother, Anne Boleyn, with whom Elizabeth found the closest and most secure sense of family, particularly her beloved governess and companion, Catherine "Cat" Ashley, who would remain with Elizabeth as lady-in-waiting when she became queen. William Cecil, who would become a great statesman when Elizabeth ascended the throne, also served in the young princess's household as her surveyor, an important mentor to Elizabeth. He would remain her closest and most trusted advisor throughout her reign as queen. Her murky status and unconventional family life aside, Elizabeth grew up very privileged. Her position as the daughter of the king entitled her to the finest education, and Elizabeth took great joy in both learning and mastery, developing a passion for academic and intellectual pursuits that was to last her entire life. Her beloved Cat Ashley organised Elizabeth's foundational education, consisting largely of English grammar, logic and rhetoric, arithmetic, music, dance, religious instruction, and various languages including French, Dutch, Italian, and Spanish. Like her father and sister before her, Elizabeth excelled at her studies, and when she was 11 years old, the first of a series of eminent Cambridge-educated tutors took over for Mistress Ashley to provide Elizabeth with her more formal education. By this time, the princess was quite a force to be reckoned with academically. She proved to be a polyglot, reportedly able to speak, read, and write fluently in Latin and Greek, in addition to the 5 languages already in her command, and by the end of her life, she had also reportedly learned to speak Cornish, Welsh, and both Scots and Irish Gaelic. She enjoyed translating both classical and contemporary texts immensely,